Welcome to the brownstone, where logic triumphs and tempers occasionally flare. Tell us where in the world you're listening. Wolfe may never leave home, but his stories travel well. Subscribe for more mysteries with Nero Wolfe and Archie Goodwin. Every good mystery deserves good company, and a little gratitude between cases. A warm thank you to Norma, our newest patron. Your support keeps the orchids blooming and the mysteries alive. Join the circle of mystery lovers on Patreon. Link in description. Nero Wolfe and the confession he regretted solving. The man who rang our bell that night looked like he'd walked out of his own obituary. It was 11:47 p.m. by the clock over Wolfe's desk, the kind that ticks soft and smug, as if proud of being the only thing in the brownstone that moves on schedule. Outside, Manhattan was getting washed like a crime scene, rain steady, sidewalks shining like fresh ink. Inside, the air was thick with the remains of Fritz's midnight coffee and Wolfe's disapproval of the human race. I was at my desk, halfway through an overdue report and an even more overdue yawn, when the bell buzzed. 3 times, long and desperate. Fritz doesn't answer bells after 11, not even for the Archangel Gabriel, and Wolfe was already in his yellow silk robe, breathing through irritation. "Archie," he said, eyes half closed, "you will determine who imagines himself welcome at this hour and disabuse him." "Yes, sir. Shall I also disabuse him of his umbrella?" Wolfe's grunt meant consent. I went to the door, opened it, and had to step back before the night shoved the stranger inside. He was drenched, thin as a rumour, and shaking hard enough to rattle the buttons on his overcoat. His hat sagged like a wilted lily. One cuff was ink-stained, the other missing a link. He looked past me into the office as though he'd stumbled into a church and was hoping for confession. Mr. Wolfe, is he... Oh God, is he awake?" "Awake, annoyed and vertical," I told him. "Come in before you dissolve. Name?" "Leon Brewster, attorney." His voice cracked on the title like it hadn't been used in months. "I must speak to him. It can't wait." "Lucky for you, he's got chronic insomnia about justice," I said, ushering him through the hall. "Wipe your feet. Fritz polishes that floor with his reputation." When I led him into the office, Wolfe was exactly where I'd left him, behind the mahogany desk, surrounded by silence and the smell of beer glass polish. The glow from the desk lamp cut the room in half. One side Wolfe, massive and immovable. The other side everything else that had the misfortune to move. Brewster blinked at him as if meeting gravity for the first time. "I've come to confess," he said. Wolfe's brows climbed an inch. "Confess? To what, sir? The misplacement of common sense?" "A murder." Brewster swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing like a buoy in deep water. "A murder that hasn't yet been discovered." That brought him Wolfe's full attention, which, at that hour, was rarer than moonlight in the cellar. I closed the door because even curiosity hates drafts. "Sit," Wolfe commanded. "You are wet, dishevelled, and possibly delirious. Mr. Goodwin, brandy." I poured him a short one. Brewster gulped half of it, choked, and coughed up a sentence. "I didn't kill her, not yet. But it's coming. The will, Trent's will, God forgive me, I forged it." Wolfe's fingers tapped the arm of his chair once, twice. "You forged a legal instrument. I assume her refers to the person you expect to murder you for it." He shook his head wildly. No, it's all tangled. There's a woman, yes, but she's innocent. It's me. I'm the one who—" He stopped. His eyes darted to the clock. Midnight was close enough to make a man hurry, even one planning to meet his conscience head-on. I said, "You're making a swell first impression, counsellor, but a little less Shakespeare and a little more affidavit might help. Who's Trent?" Brewster blinked rain out of his lashes. "Garvin Trent, industrialist, a client. He wanted to cut his nephew out of the estate. I forged the nephew's consent. He found out. There's a letter. Proof." "Where?" Wolfe asked. "I don't know. I thought I burned it." His hands trembled on the glass. "But someone knows. I got a message tonight. Confess or hang." I could see the fear running through him like bad wiring. His cufflink glinted, a single gold one with a cracked onyx face. The other wrist was bare, ink smudged deep into the fabric. "Mr. Brewster," Wolfe said, voice low and even, "your position is absurd. You assert guilt, yet deny the act. Confession without completion is merely melodrama. Mr. Goodwin, note that. Noted, I said. Headline, Man confesses early, police confused. Brewster lurched to his feet. You think I'm insane, but tomorrow they'll find a body. And when they do, remember, Leon Brewster tried to come clean. He reached into his coat pocket. I moved, quick, some habits you don't lose after a few bullets and bruises. But he only pulled out a soggy envelope, dropped it on Wolfe's desk, and stumbled toward the door. Take this, he gasped. Proof. Don't open it until you must. Before I could stop him, he was gone, out into the rain again, his figure swallowed by the night. I shut the door, holding the echo of it in my hand. The office felt suddenly twice its size, the way rooms do after ghost visit. Wolfe didn't move for a full minute. Then he reached for the envelope with 2 fingers, as though it might contain smallpox. Archie? Yes, sir. Dry the floor. Sure. Anything else? Maybe call a priest? The man looked ready for last rites. Wolfe ignored that. He slit the envelope open with his paper knife. Inside was a single sheet, half blurred by water. The ink had bled into spiderwebs, but one phrase survived. If I fall, look to the widow. Wolfe sighed. Phooey, cryptic sentiment. The species breeds. Do we chase him? I asked. He can't have gone far. Chase? You? Into a downpour? For a man determined to vanish? No. Bed. At 9 tomorrow, make inquiries. His office, his residence, discretion. That was Wolfe's version of sympathy. Delegated legwork. I pocketed the note because it seemed like the sort of thing that would come back to bite. The rain kept hammering the windows like a jury demanding verdict. You think he's nuts? I asked. Wolfe took a long, thoughtful sip of the brandy Brewster had left behind. No, merely burdened. An attorney's guilt is rarely imaginative. It concerns money or women. Both are tedious. However, he pointed at the clock. Midnight had arrived, punctual as doom. He may have chosen his hour too well. There are superstitions about confessions offered before the act. They invite fate. Meaning. Meaning, he said, closing his eyes, that by sunrise we may have a corpse to justify his melodrama. That wasn't the lullaby I'd had in mind, but you don't argue with prophecy from the chair behind the desk. I jotted notes while he leaned back, the brandy glass balanced on his stomach like an ornament of despair. Shall I call Kramer? Not yet. Inspector Kramer is allergic to premature statements. We shall avoid being his sneeze. Fine. I'll hold the scoop for breakfast. Wolfe's lips twitched, which for him was laughter. Archie, were it not for your irreverence, this establishment would drown in solemnity. Thanks. I'll have that on my tombstone. He rang the bell cord. A moment later, Fritz appeared at the doorway, starched and silent. Mr. Goodwin will require a towel and dry footwear, Wolfe said. Also tomorrow's breakfast will be delayed 30 minutes. The world will not collapse. Ja, sir. Fritz withdrew, the picture of discretion in a dressing gown. I was halfway to the hall when Wolfe's voice followed. Archie? Yeah? Do not misplace that envelope, and if you encounter Mr. Brewster again, alive or otherwise, inform me before you invite conversation. Meaning you think he'll turn up horizontal? Meaning, Wolfe said, eyes closed, that I have a distaste for being correct in unpleasant matters. That was as close to worry as he ever got. I went upstairs, dried off, and made a mental note that if a man ever felt like confessing to something, midnight in a rainstorm was still a lousy time to start. By the time I hit the pillow, the thunder had eased off, but the sentence kept replaying, If I fall, look to the widow. At 2 a.m. I gave up sleeping and typed my notes. Wolfe's words, my impressions, the cufflink, the ink stain, the look in Brewster's eyes like he was already watching his own funeral. I filed it under miscellaneous madmen, but even as I did it, I knew better. Wolfe once told me confession is a disease of the conscience. That night, it sounded more like a contagious one. When I shut off the typewriter, the city was quiet, except for a siren far downtown. I didn't know yet that it was heading for Brewster's office, or that by breakfast his confession would have a corpse to match. But I had an idea. And ideas, in this line of work, are usually just prearranged regrets. Wolfe's last words before the house went dark came drifting through the floor like a verdict. Phooey, he confessed prematurely. The morning paper beat the alarm clock by 10 minutes and ruined Wolfe's breakfast mood by 10 hours. I was halfway through my coffee, no milk for the record, and Fritz was setting down a plate of eggs à la crème that looked good enough to make diplomacy with. The Times headline glared up at me like a hangover. Attorney Leon Brewster found dead. Suicide suggested. I said, well, that's one way to keep a client from paying a bill. Wolfe, in his mustard-coloured dressing gown, halted his fork midway to his mouth. His eyes travelled to the headline, then back to the fork as if weighing which was the greater offence to civilization. So, he rumbled, the man's conscience was punctual. Or someone else's was ahead of schedule, I said. Want the details, or shall I preserve your digestion? Read, he ordered, which meant his digestion was already lost. The story was standard. Late-night suicide, revolver, locked door, the whole repertoire. A secretary found him when he didn't answer the phone this morning. There was talk of overwork, debts, the usual post-mortem compassion. The police were quoted as investigating. That word always means they haven't found the motive yet, but are optimistic about paperwork. Wolfe sighed like the world had betrayed him personally. Phooey, the man comes here to unburden himself, fails to complete his confession, and then obliges the newspapers with melodrama. Imbecile. Maybe he read your fee schedule and lost the will to live, I suggested. He aimed a stare that would have curdled Fritz's cream sauce. Mr. Goodwin, the levity of youth is a pitiful defence against mortality. Before I could reply, the phone shrilled its civic duty. I picked up. Goodwin. Archie, came Inspector Kramer's growl, fresh from a cigar and a bad morning. Get down to 212 East 46th, Brewster and Trent, attorneys at law. You knew the stiff, didn't you? Knew is a strong word. He knew where our doorbell was. Well, come know his corpse. Bring your brain. Maybe you can tell me why a guy shoots himself without leaving powder burns. That perked Wolfe's eyebrows. I covered the receiver. Kramer invites me to a suicide party, no powder burns. Indeed, Wolfe said. You will attend. Say nothing of last night. We are not an annex of the district attorney's office. Check. Silent partner in justice. Imbecile, he repeated, but softer, almost fondly. By 9:35 I was downtown, where the rain had rinsed the grime but not the conscience of the city. Brewster's office sat on the 6th floor of a stone cube that had been built by people who believed glass was immoral. The hallway smelled of dust, old law books, and the kind of moral rectitude that hides ledgers in safes. Stebbins met me at the door, looking like he'd slept in his overcoat. Morning, Goodwin. Don't touch anything. I wouldn't dream of it. I left my halo at home. Inside, Leon Brewster was slumped sideways in his leather chair, face pale, one hand on the desk, the other hanging limp. The revolver lay on the carpet a neat foot away. Too neat. A dark blot had spread under his shoulder. The office had the solemn neatness of a man who filed both clients and secrets alphabetically. Kramer was near the window, chewing on his cigar like it had insulted him. Lock on the doors inside, he said. Window shut. Janitor heard nothing. Secretary found him at 8:30. I glanced around. The blotter on the desk had an ink splash shaped like a little continent, the same dark blue I'd seen on his cuff last night. A page corner poked out of the fireplace grate, blackened at the edge. I used a pencil to lift it. Half a sentence survived. The will dated. Burning the midnight paperwork, I said. Maybe he ran out of matches before finishing the confession. Kramer snorted. You and your comedian act. Take a look at this. He nodded to Stebbins, who produced a small evidence envelope. Inside was Brewster's collar. Faint smudge of lipstick, not his shade. Perfume, too, Kramer said. Jasmine, they tell me. You know any lawyers that wear jasmine? Only the ones who plead guilty to love in the first degree. Kramer gave me a look that said the morgue had better jokes. So, you saw him last night? I kept Wolfe's instruction in mind. He dropped by once about a month ago, talked business. Haven't seen him since. Technically true, if you bend the calendar. Kramer grunted. His widow's on her way. Secretary says he'd been nervous lately, burning papers. Maybe this Trent guy he partnered with will fill in the blanks. Maybe, I said. Or maybe someone already filled them, with lead. He ignored that, crouched beside the body and pointed to the revolver. The two, registered to him, but the powder traces don't match. No burns on the hand, you tell me. I'd say the trigger was shy. Maybe someone else coaxed it. Yeah. He straightened up, rubbing his neck. The DA'll call it suicide until the lab disagrees. Meanwhile, you and that overstuffed genius of yours keep your noses clean. Always, I said. We sterilize nightly. Stebbins muttered something about wise guys, but Kramer lifted a hand. Let it go. Goodwin's housebroken, mostly. I thanked him for the compliment and poked around the office edges while pretending obedience. There were 3 photographs on the credenza, one of Brewster shaking hands with a judge, one of him with Garvin Trent, and one, face down, showing a woman's arm in a sleeveless gown. I flipped it over just far enough to glimpse the smile. Same woman who'd answered the door on Park Avenue this morning in my imagination, Mrs. Eleanor Brewster. Stebbins barked, "Hey, don't touch the exhibits." "Relax," I said, setting it back. "Just checking the decor." Kramer was studying the fireplace now. Burnt paper, lipstick, nervous lawyer. "What's your take?" My take? He didn't shoot himself, he didn't light his own funeral pyre, and he sure didn't wear jasmine. Someone helped. "You got proof?" "Not yet, but I've got Wolfe, which is worse for the guilty." Kramer grunted again, which in police language means partial agreement. "Tell him the lab will report by noon. Maybe then we'll know if this city's got one less lawyer or one more murderer." At 10:12 I left the building, breathing in air that had more smoke than oxygen. Midtown traffic was already trying to kill democracy, and the newsboys were selling Brewster's ghost by the column inch. Back at 35th Street, Fritz admitted me with the solemnity of a cathedral usher. Wolfe was in the office, reading the Herald Tribune, with the expression of a man grading civilization's homework. "Well?" he asked. "He's dead enough for the papers. Revolver near the hand, door locked, window shut, but the powder forgot to show up. There's lipstick on his collar and perfume on the air. Jasmine. Also, he tried burning something legal before he checked out." Wolfe closed his eyes. "Jasmine." He rolled the word as if tasting it. "The widow?" "Possibly. Or someone trying to smell like one." He nodded once, heavy and deliberate. "You restrained yourself with Inspector Kramer?" "As per instructions." I was the model of reticence. He probably thinks I've had a lobotomy. "Excellent. Silence is sometimes eloquence." "Sure," I said. "It also gets you fewer lunch invitations." Wolfe reached for his beer glass, chilled because Fritz knows his theology, and took a slow swallow. "Archie, the man's death is inconvenient. It will attract police bees to our honey. I must think." "That'll be a change," I said. "Meanwhile, Kramer's lab might prove him murdered. Want me to fetch details?" "No. At 1 o'clock, lunch. At 4, orchids. Between those, you may telephone discreetly to determine if Mr. Garvin Trent retains counsel or composure." "Right after I finish being discreet, I'll start being subtle." He allowed the faintest curve of lips. "Your attempts at subtlety are diverting, but rarely successful." "That's because I practice on you. Tough audience." He reached for the bell cord. "Fritz." The chef appeared, immaculate, holding a silver tray. "Lunch is prepared, sir." "Good. Mr. Goodwin will dine in the kitchen. His presence might distract me." "Touching," I said. "You kick me out and call it digestion control." He didn't answer. He was already unfolding his napkin with the solemnity of a treaty. As I reached the door, he spoke again, eyes still on the paper. "Archie." "Yeah?" "Do not, under any provocation, inform Inspector Kramer that Mr. Brewster visited us. Not yet. Not even if he asks nicely. Especially then. The police must earn their discoveries." "Fine, but if he starts earning them with handcuffs, I'll expect hazard pay." He waved me off like an annoying thought. I went to the kitchen, where Fritz poured me coffee strong enough to dissolve morality. From the dining room came the muffled clink of Wolfe's fork, a sound as rhythmic as law itself. I leaned on the counter, thinking about Brewster's ink-stained cuff, the perfume, the missing cufflink. One dead man, one widow, one partner, and a smell of jasmine that didn't belong in a law office. Somewhere between the coffee and the next cigarette, the city's noise drifted through the kitchen vent, a siren wailing uptown, maybe chasing another conscience on schedule. I said aloud, mostly to the cup, "So long, Mr. Brewster. Next time, make your confession stick." From the dining room, Wolfe's voice carried, calm and certain, "Mr. Goodwin, kindly refrain from epitaphs until the coroner is done." I grinned. "Sure, boss, but I'd bet my last milk bottle the coroner's about to prove you right again." Wolfe's answer was the quiet thud of cutlery returning to porcelain, his version of amen. By the time I reached Park Avenue late morning, the sun was doing its best impression of good manners, bright, polite, and completely insincere. The doorman took one look at me, decided I wasn't there to deliver groceries, and pressed the elevator button with a sigh that could have curdled champagne. Mrs. Leon Brewster's building was the kind where rugs muffled both footsteps and conscience. The hallway smelled of lilies, furniture polish, and money. Fresh, well-invested money. When the maid opened the door, she took in my fedora and grin like they were contagious, then drifted off to announce me. Eleanor Brewster came in without hurry, the kind of woman who could make hesitation look deliberate. Tall, tailored, and as controlled as a Swiss watch, she wore black crepe that turned mourning into fashion. Her voice was warm velvet on a chilly day. "Mr. Goodwin, isn't it? You're Mr. Wolfe's assistant." "That's right. We met your husband briefly." She blinked once, just long enough for sorrow to rehearse. "Yes, the papers said, well, they said it was suicide. They also say eating spinach gives you muscles. I've learned not to trust everything in print." A faint smile tugged her mouth. "You're very sure of yourself." "Only until I meet someone who isn't." We sat in a living room the size of Wolfe's office but built for softer crimes. Silver frames glimmered on a console table, though one stood turned face down. Lilies filled a porcelain urn on the piano, too many for comfort, their perfume doing a slow waltz with something lighter, sharper, jasmine with bergamot. If my nose hadn't gone on strike. She noticed my glance. "My husband was very fond of flowers." "So am I," said. "But lilies are for endings. The jasmine, new scent?" She hesitated barely. "A gift, from a friend." "Garvin Trent." That earned me a look fit for the Supreme Court. "You've been reading his name in the gossip columns." "Only in legal correspondence. Your husband mentioned him the night before he died." Her fingers tightened on the armrest, then relaxed like they'd practiced it. "Mr. Trent was a client. My husband was drafting a revision to his will. There were complications." "Complications meaning heirs, mistresses, or accountants." "You're rather direct, Mr. Goodwin." "It saves on cab fare." She crossed one elegant leg, revealing a flash of silk stocking that could have persuaded a jury. "Leon worried too much. He wanted everything perfect. Too perfect. Perhaps it broke him." "Maybe, but perfection rarely uses a .32 caliber editor." Her eyes flicked up, cool and bright. "Are you implying my husband was murdered?" "I'm implying people who plan suicides don't usually burn their evidence first." The silence stretched, refined and expensive. Somewhere in the apartment a clock purred. She rose, smooth as smoke, and went to the console. "I'd rather remember him this way." She set the face-down frame upright. The photo showed Leon Brewster shaking hands with Garvin Trent in front of a foundation banner. Trent was big, square-jawed, and smiling like he'd just invented morality. Between them stood a woman, Eleanor, wearing the same smile but none of the warmth. "Fine shot," I said. "He looks proud. You look patient." She studied it as though seeing it for the first time. "That was taken last spring, the day the trust was signed." "The one Trent's nephew is contesting." Her head turned sharply. "You know a great deal, Mr. Goodwin." "It's a habit my boss encourages. Keeps him from having to leave his chair." She gave a small laugh, genuine maybe. "Tell Mr. Wolfe I'm sorry for what my husband brought to your door. He was ill, overwrought. He must have imagined threats where none existed." "That's one theory," I said. "Another is he saw something worth dying or killing for." Her eyes didn't flinch, but her hand found a cigarette. I offered a light. She drew once, exhaled patience. "Men like Leon live by documents and die by them. I don't think he expected death to be literal." "Then you won't mind if we look over those documents, just to satisfy our own paperwork fetish?" Her voice went brittle. "Everything has been turned over to Mr. Trent. My husband's partner is handling the estate." "Convenient man, Trent. He's everywhere the ink's wet." "That will be all, Mr. Goodwin." I stood. "Sure, but if you find any unsigned letters lying around, don't burn them. We collect autographs." She walked me to the door. The lilies seemed to crowd closer, like spectators who already knew the ending. At the threshold, she said, softer, Whatever you're looking for, I doubt you'll find it in Leon's life. I'll take that under advisement. In the hallway, I wrote 2 words in my notebook. Jasmine, Trent. The elevator attendant pretended not to notice. Park Avenue runs on selective blindness. By the time I hit the street, the afternoon had turned syrup thick with heat and traffic. I drove back to the brownstone, parked the Heron coupe, and climbed the stoop feeling like a delivery boy for bad news. Inside, the house had that civilized hush Fritz cultivates like an herb garden. From the dining room drifted the faint smell of lamb in rosemary. It was 1:52. Wolfe's internal sundial had just swung past lunch. He was already at his desk when I entered the office, sorting correspondence as if it had committed treason. The orchids upstairs had released him early. "Well?" he demanded without looking up. "She's elegant, cooperative, and lying through her perfume." "That scent again." He lifted a brow. "Describe it." "Jasmine with a top note of bergamot. Expensive enough to make you sneeze in French." He leaned back, fingertips meeting like the ends of a bridge. "And her demeanour?" "Controlled, intelligent, pretending grief like it's on retainer." "Ah, a woman disciplined by circumstance." He closed his eyes briefly. "Did she mention Garvin Trent?" "After I did. Claimed he inherited the papers. Her late husband's files are now in Trent's custody." "Convenient," Wolfe murmured. "A man who acquires not only property but its documentation. Fooey." He gestured toward the notebook in my hand. "Your impressions, Mr. Goodwin. Read them." I did. Names, dates, fragments of dialogue, even the colour of her nail polish. Burgundy, like restraint pretending to be blood. Wolfe listened without interruption, though the corner of his mouth tightened when I hit the line about the face-down photo. "That," he said, "is revealing. People conceal what they cannot destroy. A photograph inverted signifies either contempt or regret." "Or just bad dusting," I said. He frowned. "Archie, you persist in triviality, yet your eye for detail redeems you." "Thanks. I'll embroider that on a pillow." He reached for his beer glass, chilled, amber, authority in liquid form, and took a slow swallow. Mr. Brewster's panic was not legal. It was moral. A man may endure exposure, but not his own conscience. I nodded. He looked more scared of himself than anybody else, but someone helped him along, someone wearing jasmine. "Precisely." Wolfe rang the bell cord. Fritz appeared, polite as punctuation. "Yes, sir?" "Lunch." "Ja, immediately." When Fritz withdrew, Wolfe's gaze returned to me. "You will trace the origin of that perfume. There are only a handful of importers in New York. Begin with those favoured by women of means and discretion." "I'll make the rounds," I said. "Any other errands while I'm breaking hearts?" "Yes. Ascertain whether Mr. Trent's will is filed or still in draft. And Archie, exercise tact." "I keep it in the glove compartment." He allowed himself half a smile. "You will need it. Men like Trent possess wealth enough to purchase reputation and enemies enough to justify doing so." The clock chimed 1. Wolfe unfolded his napkin with priestly solemnity. "After lunch I shall attend to the orchids. Until then, silence." "Fine," I said. "I'll go commune with the outside world. It's less temperamental than your begonias." He raised a hand, eyes half closed. "Jasmine, Archie. Remember the scent." "Hard to forget. It lingers like curiosity." As I left the office, Fritz appeared with a tray. Silver, impeccable. The lid lifted on a cloud of aroma that could have solved wars. Wolfe's eyes softened by half a shade. That's as close as he gets to joy. Outside, the city hummed its unrepentant tune. Somewhere uptown, Eleanor Brewster was probably dabbing on more jasmine and rehearsing her innocence. Somewhere downtown, Garvin Trent was adjusting his will and hoping no one noticed. And somewhere in the middle, between the orchids and the asphalt, Nero Wolfe had started to smell the difference between guilt and guilt perfumed. Later that day, 3:30 p.m., the brownstone was performing its usual symphony of silence, the orchids humming faintly upstairs, the typewriter glaring at me for neglect, and Wolfe sunk in the chair that was more throne than furniture. The only thing missing was trouble, which meant it was exactly on time. Fritz ushered in Garvin Trent like a man introducing a new species of wealth. Trent was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of executive who makes a tailor believe in capitalism. His double-breasted suit was charcoal perfection, His shoes carried a reflection of the world he thought he owned, and his face looked carved by a committee. Beside him moved Miss Avis Dean, secretary, in a navy dress that knew where every button ought to be. She was small, self-contained, and neat enough to file under potential distraction. The faintest trace of perfume followed her, jasmine with bergamot, the same fragrance that had clung to Leon Brewster's collar. Trent accepted Wolfe's office like it came with the territory. He offered a brisk handshake, which Wolfe ignored by nodding. "Mr. Trent," Wolfe said, "be seated. You have brought an assistant, I see." "Miss Dean," Trent said smoothly. "She manages my correspondence and records. I trust that's acceptable." Wolfe's eyelids lifted a fraction. "If she refrains from speech unless addressed, entirely." That earned me a glance from Miss Dean, sharp enough to puncture but not draw blood. I grinned to show immunity. Trent wasted no time. "I understand you've taken an interest in the death of Leon Brewster. You'll forgive me if I'm direct. His suicide has complicated several financial matters. The man was not stable." "Indeed," Wolfe murmured. "A convenient instability, no doubt." Trent's jaw flexed. "If you're suggesting I profited—" "I suggest nothing. I listen. Please proceed." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Brewster handled my personal estate. We were drafting a new will. The press has begun to speculate about our business, which I find intolerable. I came here to make certain your investigation doesn't add fuel." That was my cue. "You mean you'd like to pay us to mind our own business?" Trent's eyes cut to me like switchblades. "I'd prefer to think of it as retaining discretion." I shrugged. "In this office, discretion has a sliding scale. Depends how honest the client is." Wolfe growled softly. "Archie." Then to Trent. "You will ignore Mr. Goodwin's insolence. He is indispensable but occasionally exuberant." "That's generous," I said. "I'll frame it." Trent shifted gears. Brewster was drowning in debt. He speculated, unwisely. When the market tightened, he panicked. I told him to steady himself, but guilt eats some men alive. "Guilt of insolvency?" Wolfe asked, "or forgery?" That hit. Trent blinked once. "I beg your pardon?" Wolfe's voice went syrup-slow. "A forgery was mentioned in certain whispers. Of course, gossip is as base as it is frequent. Yet you come here seeking discretion. I infer there is something to conceal." Miss Dean's fingers tightened on her notebook. Trent waved a hand. "This is absurd. The man's death is tragic enough without your melodrama." I said, "We've had worse melodramas. Usually they involve a will and somebody lying about it. Yours qualifies." Trent's colour darkened. "You're implying—" "I'm implying I can spot dishonesty the way a hound spots bacon. You reek of it." For a second I thought he'd swing. Wolfe's voice sliced in velvet cold. "Mr. Trent, kindly do not attempt intimidation in my office. The furniture is antique." Trent rose halfway, mastered himself, and sat again. "Very well. Since plain speech is your currency, yes, the will is being revised. My nephew disputes my allocation of certain funds. Brewster was drafting a document to close the matter. That's all. I'll pay a generous fee for your silence." "Your generosity is unneeded," Wolfe said. "We do not sell silence. We rent attention, and yours has expired." That got him to his feet for good. "You'll regret that tone." "I rarely regret anything," Wolfe said. "It consumes energy." Miss Dean hurried to gather his briefcase. As they reached the door, I added, "Honest wills, dishonest witnesses. Funny how often they travel in pairs." Trent stopped. His voice was iron wrapped in manners. "Be careful, Mr. Goodwin. Curiosity is expensive." "So's perfume," I said lightly, glancing at Miss Dean. "Jasmine with bergamot, isn't it?" She froze, only a heartbeat, but I caught it. Then she smiled faintly. "I wouldn't know. It was a gift." When they were gone, Wolfe exhaled a sound between contempt and amusement. "Archie." "Yeah?" "He is lying, and not even competently." "Sure, but his secretary's doing a better job. Same scent that was on Brewster's collar." His brows rose. "You're certain?" "As much as a man can be without taking dictation from her perfume bottle." "Pfui, you will follow her." "I thought you'd say that. Want me to wear my halo or the subtle grin?" "Neither. You are not a matador, Archie. Leave the charging to bulls. Then I'll just wave a small red handkerchief. He glared but didn't object. Report by evening. I shall be upstairs at 4 for the orchids. I grabbed my hat and went hunting. Miss Dean didn't head back to any office. She left Trent's chauffeured sedan on Madison Avenue, walked briskly east, and ducked into a midtown cafe that catered to the middle tier. Good coffee, bad secrets. I took a booth 2 rows behind her and ordered ginger ale for camouflage. She removed her gloves with precision, checked her compact and lit a cigarette. No tremor, no nerves. The kind of woman who could take dictation while her employer confessed to murder. When the waiter moved off, I slid into the opposite seat. Hope you don't mind. Every time I see a familiar face, I like to ruin its lunch. She startled, then composed herself. Mr. Goodwin, isn't it? You followed me. Strictly professionally, Wolfe's orders. Her eyes were grey, cool, unreadable. You and Mr. Wolfe have active imaginations. Comes with the territory. So, Miss Dean, or should I say Mrs. Dean, or maybe Miss Avery. That's the name on your apartment mailbox on 58th Street. That shook her composure half an inch. You've been thorough. Habit, I leaned in. You worked for Brewster before Trent, didn't you? Her gaze flickered. For a short time. And left abruptly. Why? Differences. Legal, moral, or romantic? She smiled, thin as a blade. Professional. He expected more than competence. I refused. Meaning he fired you, or someone told him to. She exhaled smoke like punctuation. Mr. Goodwin, I don't discuss my employer's failings. Then let's discuss their corpses. You saw Brewster recently? No. Perfume says otherwise. She tilted her chin. You're very observant, for a man with no manners. Flattery accepted. I watched her eyes. Brewster had ink on his cuff the night he died. He'd been writing, maybe a will, maybe a confession. Whichever it was, your boss Garvin Trent doesn't want it found. Care to explain that? I wouldn't know. Then I'll guess. Trent forges a clause, Brewster panics, someone decides suicide looks tidier. Her hand trembled slightly as she stubbed the cigarette. You should leave things alone, Mr. Goodwin. I tried once. It didn't pay as well. She stood, smoothing her gloves. If you persist, you'll regret it. Lady, I said, rising, I regret everything eventually, but not always for long. She walked out, shoulders straight, perfume trailing like a challenge. I paid the bill, left 2 dimes and a curiosity, and tailed her halfway down the block. She turned into an apartment building, the same one I'd noted. The name on the mailbox wasn't Dean, it was Avis Avery. Red herring or alias. Either way, it stank of secrecy. I phoned the brownstone from the lobby booth. Fritz answered in his best cathedral whisper. Mr. Wolfe is with the orchids. Tell him I'll report at dinner, I said. Back at the brownstone that evening, Wolfe was at his desk, surrounded by the remains of Fritz's veal ragout and the serenity that follows calories. He looked up as I entered. Well? She's using an alias. Lived under it since before she worked for Brewster. And the perfume connection checks. Either she's sentimental about old employers, or she's part of why they become old. He grunted. And Mr. Trent? Still clean on paper, but his will's been bouncing between lawyers like a hot potato, the nephews contesting on grounds of undue influence. Wolfe nodded slowly. A pattern emerges. A forged document. A guilty lawyer. A dead man. And a woman fragrant with deception. Add a boss who sweats money and a secretary who lies gracefully. It's a full cast. He steepled his fingers. Archie, you have done tolerably well. I live for such outbursts. He sighed. Tomorrow, Saul Panzer will shadow Miss Dean. You will call on Mr. Trent's nephew and ascertain his grievances. For now, he lifted the bell cord. Beer. Fritz arrived with a tray and 2 glasses. Wolfe poured one for himself, hesitated, and poured another half-glass for me. To restraint, he said. Mine or yours? Both, for now. He took a sip, eyes half closed. Mr. Trent believes he can manipulate perception. We shall disabuse him. And Miss Dean? She will provide the thread. The question is whether she knows she holds it. He leaned back, massive and serene, while the city hummed through the window glass. I raised my glass in mock salute. To lying clients, may they keep us in business. Wolfe's eyes opened, sharp and faintly amused. Phooey, Archie. Even deceit has standards. The note came the way bad news always does in our line of work. Quiet, after hours, and under the door. It was 10:30, and Wolfe was settling into the after-dinner lull that sits between beer and orchids. The room was full of cigar smoke and digestive satisfaction. Fritz had cleared the veal plates, I was typing my notes, and civilization was holding steady until a soft shuffle at the vestibule broke the peace. I crossed to the hall and found a plain envelope lying on the rug unsealed, smelling faintly of jasmine. The handwriting was neat, small, and too careful. I read aloud, "Mr. Goodwin, I have proof Brewster was killed. Please come at once. A.D." Wolfe looked up, brows forming their usual architectural curve. A.D.? Unless St. Augustine's writing from beyond, I'd say Avis Dean. He grunted. Phooey, at this hour? Truth keeps late hours. Folly keeps later ones, he said, and reached for the bell cord. Fritz, my coat. That made me stare. You're not actually going? He shot me the look reserved for morons and Republicans. Certainly not. I merely dislike drafts when doors open. You will go, at once. Sure, and if I don't come back? Then you'll have proved my premise about folly. Call me from there, immediately. I pocketed the note, grabbed my hat, and left him to his orchids of reason. Miss Dean's building was one of those polite midtown stacks that try to pretend they're in the country. Ivy-framed doors, discreet brass plates, and a night doorman who sized me up like an unpaid bill. She lived on the 6th floor. I rang. Nothing. I knocked. A moment later came her voice, small and shaky. Who is it? Goodwin. Archie Goodwin. The chain rattled, then released. She opened the door halfway, eyes wide, face pale under perfect lipstick. The apartment behind her looked expensive and nervous. Ivory curtains, a faint radio hum, the smell of tea and fear. Thank heaven, she whispered. I didn't think you'd come. Lady, when a note like that crawls under my door, it comes with a leash. She gestured me in. I shouldn't have written, but I couldn't sleep. I found something Leon Brewster left with me, hidden among old dictation sheets. She crossed to the small desk by the window, a porcelain teapot steaming beside it. On the blotter lay a thin envelope. Before you open it, she said, voice trembling, I need to explain. Garvin Trent forged the new will. He forced Leon to copy the signature. Blackmail, I think. Leon wanted to expose him. That's why he died. She looked ready to fall apart, and I moved closer to keep her from doing it. You're sure of this? I was there the night he dictated the changes. He said he'd kept a duplicate draft and a witness, but I don't know who. He never told me. Her hands shook as she poured tea into 2 cups. I've been afraid. Trent suspects I know. Then maybe skip the social hour and tell me the rest. I will. Just let me... She lifted the cup, then froze. A shadow slid across the frosted glass panel in the front door. It lingered, a tall outline, motionless. Someone's there, she breathed. I turned fast, reached for the knob, yanked it open. The hallway was empty except for an old radiator hissing like gossip. When I turned back, Miss Dean was swaying. The cup slipped from her hand and shattered. She gasped once and crumpled. I caught her before she hit the rug. Her eyes fluttered, lips forming something, maybe a name. But all that came out was air. The teacup lay broken beside us. The handle snapped clean, liquid staining the carpet dark. I laid her down and checked for a pulse. Faint, fluttering, then gone. Poison, fast-acting, no odour. Whoever delivered that shadow knew his chemistry. I grabbed the phone and dialed the brownstone. Wolfe answered on the second ring. She's dead, I said. A long pause. Explain. Poisoned. In her apartment. She'd just told me Trent forged the will. She had an envelope on the desk. Found, but stripped clean. Somebody was at the door, but I was too slow. Confound it, Archie. Did you touch the cup? Only to stop it from baptizing her rug. Then your fingerprints are now evidence. Stay put. Call Inspector Kramer at once. And Archie. Yeah? Come home. Alive. That last word landed heavier than the others. Kramer arrived 20 minutes later, cigar clenched, coat collar up against the drizzle. Behind him came Pearlie Stebbins and a uniform with a camera. He surveyed the room, growled low. Every time I see your face, Goodwin, there's a corpse in the neighborhood. You carry a license for that? Sure, I said. It's called coincidence. Tell it to the DA. He turned to Stebbins. Get the lab boys on the cup. Don't smudge the prints. Stebbins grunted assent. Kramer stooped by the body, his movements surprisingly gentle. Poison, huh? You see it happen? Close enough to regret my timing. I handed him the folded note Miss Dean had sent. That's what brought me. He read it, jaw tight. You know what this means. I'll have reporters screaming about another witness silenced, and your fat friend will be quoted saying "Phooey." Then you'd better call him before he beats you to it. He did, grudgingly. I heard him bark into the phone. Yeah, Wolfe, it's poison, all right. No, you stay put. For once I agree with you. When he hung up, he shot me a look that could sand wood. He says you think Trent's behind it. Miss Dean did. I just think she was convincing. Any proof? Not unless I start believing in ghosts. The envelope she showed me vanished when I checked her pulse. Wonderful, Kramer muttered. A missing envelope, a dead girl, and your fingerprints on the china. The DA'll love that. Relax. I'm the only guy in town who still drinks ginger ale at stakeouts. Check the teapot, Stebbins called from the kitchenette. Smells like almonds, Inspector. Kramer nodded grimly. Cyanide. Figures. He lit another cigar, the flame shaking slightly. All right, Goodwin. Run it down from the start, slowly. Pretend I'm Wolfe and need it in English. So I did. Note under the door. Her story about the forged will. The shadow outside. When I finished, he blew smoke through his teeth. Trent's too slick for door-to-door killing, but maybe he's got hired help. Maybe Miss Dean was the help and someone tied up loose ends, I offered. Red herrings are cheap this week. He glared but didn't argue. Fine. You stay out of this till I clear it with the DA. Sure, I'll just go home and knit. I'm serious, Goodwin. One more body near you and I'll make you the fourth suspect by reflex. Don't worry, I'll keep my alibi warm. He turned to Stebbins. Seal the apartment and get that teapot to the lab. If the handle broke clean, there might be prints. By the time I got back to the brownstone, it was close to midnight. The rain had turned the sidewalks into mirrors, and the city's lights looked ashamed of themselves. Inside, the office glowed with steady lamplight. Wolfe sat behind the desk, a globe of calm disapproval. He was in shirt sleeves, suspenders gleaming, eyes fixed on the phone as if willing it to report results. He spoke first. Kramer has just left Miss Dean's apartment, poison confirmed, cyanide in the tea. Yeah, quick, professional. I dropped into the red chair. She said Trent forged the will and Brewster planned to expose him. Then she died mid-sentence, envelope gone. Wolfe's eyes closed. Silence again. The motif repeats. Meaning? Meaning the truth, when near revelation is stifled. First Brewster, now his secretary. I leaned forward. She wasn't secretary anymore. Remember, she used to work for Brewster. Maybe she kept a copy of the will. Perhaps. He reached for his beer glass, frowned. Fritz neglected to chill this properly. Monstrous. Don't scold him, he's grieving too. That earned me a sigh heavy enough to tilt the building. Archie, sarcasm ill becomes tragedy. Did you observe anything unusual at the scene besides the envelope's absence? Yeah. Cup handle broken clean off. Not dropped, snapped, like somebody gripped it tight while forcing her to drink. Then murder by coercion. Unsophisticated, but effective. He turned to the phone and dialed. Mr. Kramer? Yes, it is Wolfe. Goodwin reports the cup handle was broken. I see. No, Inspector, I have no intention of leaving my home to confirm it. You have eyes. Good. Then we concur. He hung up with the satisfaction of a man proving gravity. Kramer's promising a toxicology report by morning, he said. He also threatens to question you again. He already did. He's run out of adjectives. Wolfe drummed his fingers. This accelerates matters. We must identify the missing witness Brewster mentioned. Find him or her, and we find the motive. Assuming they're still breathing. An optimistic assumption, he said dryly. You will begin tomorrow. Consult Saul Pantzer. He may trace the witness through Brewster's former clerks. Got it. He studied me for a long moment, the expression softening by fractions. Archie, you take unnecessary risks. Sure, occupational hazard. Besides, someone had to open that door. He grunted. You are exasperatingly competent. Go to bed. That your way of saying, glad you're not dead? His eyes twinkled. Barely. Do not presume sentiment. It is unbecoming. Sure, I said, standing, but it keeps the rent paid. As I reached the door, the phone rang again. Wolfe answered, listened, and his face darkened. Thank you, Inspector, he said, and hung up slowly. Well, I asked. The envelope, he said. It was empty. That hung in the room like leftover smoke. Outside, a car horn wailed, one long note that sounded too much like laughter. Wolfe looked at me. Archie, this case becomes intolerable. Tomorrow, we end the silence. I nodded. Fine by me. I'm getting tired of confessions with body counts. He leaned back, eyes closing, voice low. Then sleep. And, Archie, yeah, do not open any envelopes tonight. The next morning, 9:00 a.m., broke grey and sullen, like Manhattan had stayed up too late arguing with itself. Inside the brownstone, the air was sharp with coffee and quiet intention. Wolfe was already in his chair, surrounded by notepads in a mood that could curdle ambition. I'd just finished sorting the morning mail when he said, Archie, sit, we must impose order upon chaos. That was his version of good morning. I took my post opposite, notebook in hand. On the blotter before him lay a sheet divided into 4 columns, each headed neatly in his handwriting. Trent, Eleanor, Dean, missing witness. The threads converge, he declared. Each death or deceit serves to protect a single fabrication, the will. Our task is to expose its anatomy. He drew a circle around Trent's name, the architect, then one around Dean's. The messenger, now silent. Yeah, I said, silence is catching. We should start selling it by the pound. Wolfe ignored that. Mr. Panzer will trace the notary who authenticated the forged document. Mr. Durkin will investigate pharmacies supplying cyanide compounds. I rose. And me? You will shuttle between Inspector Kramer and me until mutual understanding prevails. Translation, I get barked at from both ends. He sniffed. You are resilient. You thrive on provocation. At 10 sharp, Saul Panzer arrived. Small, calm, unshakable as gravity. He received his instructions without commentary and left through the rain like a shadow carrying purpose. 15 minutes later, Fred Durkin lumbered in, cap dripping, expression wary. Cyanide's tricky, Fred said. Plenty of sources, labs, photoshops, jewelers. I'll start with the downtown suppliers. Good, Wolfe murmured. Use discretion. Return before 5. Fred nodded, pocketed his notes and vanished. The office settled into its usual rhythm, Wolfe dictating, me translating his precision into English. At 11:20 the phone rang. Kramer. His voice came through the receiver like sandpaper on conscience. Goodwin, tell Wolfe he's holding back again. He's not. He's just slower than your warrant system. I've got press crawling all over this. You think I enjoy explaining 3 corpses in 48 hours? I wouldn't know. You seem to manage the lighting. He growled. Listen, that Dean girl's toxicology came back. Cyanide, sure enough, but mixed with almond essence. Whoever dosed her knew how to hide it, and you were there. I was, but I'm not much for tea. Try Trent's crowd. That's the plan, he said. Tell Wolfe if he's got proof, cough it up. He'll call you if he sneezes. I hung up before he could bark further. When I relayed the message, Wolfe's lips compressed. The inspector's distress is palpable, though his logic remains arthritic. Translation, he's mad you're not dancing to his tune. Wolfe leaned back, eyes half closed. Justice, Archie, demands clarity. Control demands obedience. We pursue the former, Kramer the latter. Both are perilous. Meaning we're all tightrope walkers with bad balance. Phooey. At 1 o'clock, Fritz appeared at the door with his usual dignity. Lunch, gentlemen. Wolfe pushed away from the desk with the air of a man postponing tragedy. Excellent. Mr. Goodwin, we will resume at 2. I grabbed my sandwich in the kitchen and let him commune with lamb and burgundy. When I returned to the office at 2:15, he was back at his map, pencil in hand, moving names around like chess pieces. Report, he asked. Kramer's chewing nails. Press says Dean's death was suicide. His nostrils flared. Suicide, the devil is efficient. That line hung in the air like smoke. The phone rang again. Saul this time. I caught Wolfe's half of the conversation. Short, clipped, growing colder by the second. He hung up and said, "The notary, Mr. James Heller, is dead. Hit and run yesterday morning." I let out a low whistle. "Same morning Miss Dean got her cyanide cocktail. Efficient's right." "Yes. Our antagonist removes impediments with industrial speed." "Trent?" "Indubitably. Though proving it may cost us patience, and perhaps your skin, if you persist in gallivanting." "Don't worry. I'll only risk half my skin until we get paid." He grunted. Crass. Before I could reply, the bell rang, a sharp, official 3-count that always spells Kramer. Fritz admitted him with the resignation of a man escorting a thunderstorm. Kramer entered, coat dripping, cigar clamped between teeth. "All right, Wolfe, I've had it. Every time you sit quiet, somebody else winds up dead." Wolfe gestured to the chair. "Inspector, if indignation burned calories, you'd be a wraith. Sit." "I'll stand. You've got information and I want it." Wolfe folded his hands. "Indeed? What kind?" "Don't play dumb. You knew about Dean's note before it hit my desk. You sent your boys digging into pharmacies and you—" He swung toward me. "You were at the scene. I think you're holding back evidence." I was about to retort when Wolfe's voice dropped like a velvet hammer. "Inspector!" Kramer froze mid-word. Wolfe rose, all 280 pounds of him, an event rare enough to earn silence. "My assistant obeys me," Wolfe said quietly. "If there is deficiency, it is mine, not his. You will refrain from impugning him in my office." Kramer stared, then took the cigar from his mouth. For a long second he said nothing. "All right," he muttered finally. "I'll let that stand." Wolfe sank back down, breathing through his nose. "Good. Now, shall we proceed rationally?" Kramer grunted assent. I poured him coffee, which he accepted like it might explode. "Your pharmacy inquiries interest me," Wolfe said. "The poison that killed Miss Dean could be traced by purchase record." "We're on it," Kramer said. "Stebbins has half the city combed. Why? You got something?" "Only conjecture. But consider, the same morning Mr. Heller, the notary, is struck by a car, Miss Dean receives cyanide. Both linked to Trent. Coincidence?" Kramer scowled. "Maybe, maybe not. Trent's got lawyers thicker than thieves. You saying he killed them personally?" "No. He employs convenience." "Meaning hired hands, we're checking." Wolfe nodded once. "Then we share purpose, if not procedure." That might have been his version of a truce. Kramer finished the coffee, set the cup down hard, and said, "If you dig up anything that can stand up in court, call me first. I don't want the Gazette printing it before I do." "You have my word," Wolfe said. Kramer grunted, jammed the cigar back between his teeth, and stomped out. When the door shut, Wolfe exhaled slowly. He will fume for an hour, then act precisely as I suggested. "Comforting," I said. Meanwhile, our murder count's keeping pace with city traffic. At 3:30, Fred Durkin phoned. "Found a pharmacy near Trent's office, ordered potassium cyanide 2 weeks ago. Signed for by a lab assistant. Name's Hayworth. No lab on record." Wolfe's eyes glimmered. "Excellent. Retrieve a copy of the delivery receipt, have it notarized, and return before dinner." Fred hesitated. "The clerk's nervous. Wants $50 to forget my face." "Pay him," Wolfe said. "Consider it an investment in memory." I hung up, scribbling notes. If this keeps up, we'll have an itemized list of who Trent didn't kill. Shorter version. Wolfe didn't smile. "Archie, make a call to Lon Cohen. Instruct him to suppress further mention of suicide in Miss Dean's death." "Sure, but Cohen won't like being gagged." "Then bribe him with accuracy. Tell him tomorrow's revelation will sell more papers than rumor." I phoned Lon, promised him thunder for breakfast, and hung up, feeling like I'd just sold both truth and anticipation wholesale. At 5 sharp, Saul returned. He looked dusted with rain and success. "Heller's death wasn't random," he said. "Witness saw a black Packard push him off the curb. Plates traced to a shell company, owned by Trent's firm." Wolfe's lips tightened. "The devil, it seems, keeps excellent records." Saul added, "Police never got that lead. I can hand it to Kramer or keep it quiet till you're ready." "Quiet," Wolfe said. "For now. Thank you, Mr. Panzer." When Saul left, Wolfe stared at his map again. 2 deaths, both custodians of documents. The next will be whoever holds the money." "Eleanor Brewster?" He nodded. "The widow. Trent paid her a visit 2 days before her husband's demise." "Friendly condolence in advance," I said. Wolfe pointed his pencil at me. "You will verify whether a financial transfer occurred, discreetly." That meant a bank job, the kind involving questions instead of guns. By 6, I was leaning on a teller's counter downtown, smiling like a trustworthy sinner. A few phone calls, a borrowed name, and 20 minutes later I had it. Eleanor Brewster, account number 4172, credited with $15,000 from Garvin Trent & Company, dated 48 hours before Leon Brewster's death. By 7:30 I was back home. Wolfe was in the office reading Kramer's latest bulletin in the Gazette. Headline, "Police still baffled in Dean death." He looked up as I entered. "Well?" "Confirmed. 15 grand, wired from Trent's account to the widow 2 days before the lawyer died." His eyes narrowed. "Ah, payment or purchase?" "Depends what she sold." He tapped the pencil against his palm. "Control, Archie. That is the pattern. Trent controls the living by fear, the dead by fabrication. Even Mrs. Brewster's silence may be bought." "Then we need to repossess it." "Precisely. Tomorrow we shall compel confession, the honest variety, if such exists." Fritz appeared with the dinner tray, beef bourguignon, 2 chilled beers. Wolfe waved him toward the desk. "You will eat here, Archie. There is satisfaction in companionship, even when verbal exchange irritates." "Thanks. I'll try to be irritating in moderation." He lifted his glass. "To efficiency, ours, not the devil's." I clinked it. "And to tomorrow, may it be less crowded with bodies." He grunted approval, and the office filled with the aroma of beef, the clink of cutlery, and that rare peace that comes between storms. Outside, the city rumbled its endless disapproval. Inside, Wolfe plotted vengeance in syllables. I took notes, and somewhere out there Garvin Trent was counting on control. He didn't know it yet, but the trap had already closed. If Nero Wolfe ever took up poker, he'd bankrupt the city. By mid-afternoon he was sitting behind his desk, beer glass poised like a royal scepter, and plotting a bluff that could make the devil fold. Lon Cohen of the Gazette got the first card. I dialed him while Wolfe leaned back, eyes closed, dictating his lines like a radio actor too proud to rehearse. "Mr. Cohen," Wolfe said into the receiver, "you may inform your readers that the late Mr. Brewster left a statement, the substance of which is unknown, but its existence undeniable." Lon made noises like a man stepping on his own typewriter. Wolfe continued, silky as ever. "No, I shan't elaborate. Print it as you will. I expect tomorrow's edition to be gratifying." Then he hung up, satisfied as a spider with a fresh web. "That's it?" I asked. "We just light the fuse and wait for the bang?" He sipped his beer. "Precisely. Truth, Mr. Goodwin, is most persuasive when it resembles rumour." It took less than 4 hours for the explosion to arrive. At 7:10, the doorbell rang. "A Mr. Kinsolving, attorney," Fritz announced. "Retract that Gazette rumour or we sue," Kinsolving snapped. "Do," Wolfe said mildly. "The spectacle will be instructive." Kinsolving spluttered. "You're playing a dangerous game." Wolfe rang for Fritz. "Yes, good evening, sir." That was dismissal in Wolfe's dialect, and even Kinsolving recognized it. He snatched his hat, muttered a threat about slander, and stormed out. When the door shut, I couldn't resist. "Well, that's one rattled snake. You planning to charm the rest of them?" He gave me a look mild enough to count as affection. "Panic is a solvent. It loosens tongues and tightens ropes," I grinned. "Remind me never to play bridge with you." At 8, during Fritz's souffle intermission, Wolfe dictated a new order. "Archie, tomorrow morning you will let it be known, discreetly, that Miss Dean's tea set has been sent for toxicological analysis. Mr. Trent will deduce that the contents were not fully destroyed." "Sure," I said. "You realize Kramer's going to love finding out we're impersonating his lab." "Then let him. He thrives on indignation." After dinner, Wolfe retired upstairs for orchid time. I stayed in the office typing up notes, the lamplight pooling like warm honey across the desk. By 10, the house was quiet, too quiet for a place that had hosted 3 murders by proxy. When the mail slot clacked, I almost ignored it. Then I saw the envelope. Cream paper, Type to dress, no return. I opened it under the desk lamp. Tell your master to stop digging. The confession burns tonight, and so will the man who found it. No signature, just a faint smell of ink and machinery. The postmark read Chelsea Station, and in small type below, printed by Trent Lithographic Co. I phoned the plant rooms. Wolfe answered, voice echoing faintly among the orchids. Report, Archie. Special delivery, threats and poetry. Somebody wants to barbecue us, he exhaled. Describe it. I did. Postmark from Trent's press, then he overreaches. You want me to call Kramer? No, let him sleep. He'll need his strength for outrage tomorrow. Bring the letter up. When I reached the plant room, he took it delicately, holding it like something alive. The orchids gleamed behind him, pale and watchful. He read it once, then again, lips curling. Ah, proof of fear, the finest fragrance. You sound pleased, I said. We're the ones on the menu. He tucked the letter into an envelope. Archie, I am not omniscient, merely patient. And tonight, patience is the sharper blade. He turned back to his orchids. I shook my head. Sure, just don't water them with kerosene. He grunted, which was as close as Wolfe came to a good night. New York doesn't sleep, but sometimes it sweats. That night, the city was steaming like a bad conscience, and the call came through just as I was preparing to respect Fritz's custard with the solemnity it deserved. Kramer's voice crackled over the line like sandpaper on tin. Goodwin, tell Wolfe his friend Trent's warehouse is doing a fine impression of hell. Bring your camera, not your mouth. 10 minutes later, I was on 34th Street watching fire chew through timber and tar like it had a grudge. The building was Trent's shipping depot, his ironclad alibi for the night Brewster died. A few uniforms were keeping the crowd back, and Stebbins stood near a water hose, glistening like an overcooked ham. He spotted me. Well, if it ain't the brains of the outfit. You come to toast marshmallows. Just checking whether the city's running out of matches, I said. This blaze looks deliberate enough to have a lawyer. He grunted. Insurance job. Trent's in the clear. He was with his accountant all evening. Yeah, maybe the accountant's got a fondness for bonfires. The fire captain stomped past, cursing about accelerants. When they finally let me close, I waded through the smoke to what used to be an office. The air smelled of oil, ink, and fraud. Among the ashes, something winked. A corner of half-burned paper, fused together like black lace. I coaxed it loose with my penknife. Ledger fragments. On one, half-charred but legible, LB. And below it, a figure, $5,000. I sealed the pieces in an evidence envelope and left before anyone could accuse me of arson by admiration. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened while I described the scene. His expression didn't move a millimeter. A fire, he murmured, is both cleaner and louder than a bullet. Trent's choice betrays anxiety. He's got plenty to burn, I said, including his conscience. Phooey, conscience is not flammable, only proof. He lifted a scorched scrap with silver tongs. LB, Leon Brewster. Payment. The ledger recorded disbursements connected to the forgery. Trent panicked. Then let's catch him before he starts lighting matches under himself. Wolfe's eyes closed. Theodore, he said, not calling me by my name, but his orchid man's, which was a sign his mind had already gone botanical. Archie, find him, alive. At 11:42 p.m., Grand Central smelled of steam, perfume, and bad decisions. Stebbins and I had the West Concourse staked out like a pair of statues with ulcers. The word was Trent planned a midnight train to Boston, under the alias G. Terrell. Man's smart, Stebbins muttered, scanning the crowd. Knows we can't nail him yet. Smart, I said. He's leaving town with his name still in the Gazette. That's not brains, that's theatre. Then I saw him, grey hat pulled low, ticket in hand, moving fast toward platform 27. The kind of walk that says, don't notice me, which is the surest way to stand out. We closed in from opposite sides. He spotted me first, cursed under his breath, and bolted. For a man with money, he ran like he'd never tipped a cab. I took the shortcut through the baggage hall, cutting him off by the gate. He spun right into Stebbins' bulk. Trent's hat went flying. Get your hands off me. Sure, I said. Once you tell us where you're running with that halo of smoke behind you. He glared. I have nothing to say without counsel. Then make it quick, Stebbins growled. Train's leaving. Trent's jaw tightened. "This is absurd. The fire was an accident. My clerk—" "Your clerk's at Bellevue," I cut in. "Smoke inhalation. Maybe he'll recover enough to tell us which shelf you doused first." He tried to shoulder past me. "I'm leaving town on business." "Yeah," I said. "Business of disappearing." He snapped. "You can't hold me. I never wrote a confession." He stopped. The word hung there, naked and damning. I grinned. "Funny. Nobody mentioned a confession, but thanks for clearing that up." Stebbins let out a bark of a laugh and clamped a hand on his shoulder. "Congratulations, pal. You just confessed to knowing about the confession." Trent's face went the colour of yesterday's ashes. He sagged, realising he'd talked himself into a boxcar. Kramer arrived 5 minutes later, bulldozing through the station like an oncoming train of his own. He took one look at Trent and said, "You boys can let go. He's detained for questioning, no cuffs. Tomorrow, Wolfe's office. We'll hear it there." Stebbins muttered something about paperwork. I handed over the envelope of ledger fragments. "Compliments of the arson department," I said. Kramer took it, giving me the kind of look he reserves for Wolfe's favourite tricks. "Tell your boss I'll want him tomorrow morning, and tell him nice work." That was as close as Kramer got to affection. When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was waiting, robe on, beer poured, patience humming like a fat cat in sunlight. I gave him the rundown, ending with Trent's verbal fumble. He listened, eyes gleaming. "For a man so informal, you have an impeccable sense of timing." "Thanks. I'll add it to my resume between coffee procurement and dodging fire." He sipped, nodded once and said, "Mr. Trent's conflagration destroyed evidence, but his tongue supplied its echo. Tomorrow we shall reconstruct the remainder." "Then what?" He smiled faintly. "Then, Mr. Goodwin, we make him burn properly, in public." I said, "That's poetic. You been reading Dante again?" "Phooey," he murmured, raising his glass. Dante lacked precision. The office settled into the midnight quiet of success, half smoke, half triumph. Outside, sirens dwindled toward the river. Inside, the fire was over, but the heat was just beginning. At 11 the next morning, Inspector Kramer looked like he'd been steamed, pressed, and forgotten in the laundry. He barged into the brownstone without waiting for Fritz's ceremonial welcome, cigar burning low and temper lower. "Wolfe," he barked, "I've had it. You've got 1 hour before I move without you." Wolfe, who was at his desk rearranging his notes like a general setting up artillery, didn't blink. "You won't," he said. "You need me." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "Don't flatter yourself." "I don't. I appraise myself." Wolfe's tone could have sliced bread. "Sit, Inspector. You'll find anger poor insulation for logic." Kramer grumbled, but the chair took him. Fritz appeared with beer and set 2 glasses with the dignity of a high priest performing communion. Kramer waved his away. Wolfe raised his. "You have 1 hour, you say? I shall require only 40 minutes. He tugged the bell cord. "Archie, the summons list." I came in with my notebook, pretending to check my watch. 40 minutes, huh? That's ambitious, even for you." "Phooey," he said. "Competence is not ambition." Within half an hour, our guests began to arrive. Eleanor Brewster was first, pale, elegant, brittle as glass. She carried a handkerchief like it might protect her from the truth. Behind her came Garvin Trent, all swagger and cologne, the sort of man who'd trademark his conscience if it turned a profit. Last was the typist, a thin, nervous kid named Howard Minter, whose collar wilted under pressure. He looked like he wanted to apologize for being alive. Kramer took up his post near the window, arms folded, cigar smoke wreathing him like a storm cloud. Wolfe waited until everyone had settled before speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "this will be brief. I detest repetition, and the law is glutted with it." He leaned back. Mr. Brewster's death was no suicide. It was a calculated relief, not of his soul, but of Garvin Trent's predicament. Trent's mouth twitched. "That's absurd." "Indeed," Wolfe said mildly. "Absurdity often prefaces truth." He gestured toward Minter. "This young man will confirm that you, Mr. Trent, ordered him to alter the draft of your will, to insert a clause favouring Mrs. Brewster, thus providing motive for her husband's despair." Minter's Adam's apple jumped like a startled rabbit. I didn't know what it meant at first," he stammered. "He said it was a correction, a clerical thing. Then he gave me $200 to retype the signature page." 200, I said. That's expensive stationery. Trent rounded on him. You lying fool. You'll retract that or— Sit down, Wolfe thundered. It wasn't loud, but it froze the room. Mr. Trent, you will keep your seat and your tongue. I will not endure melodrama before lunch. Kramer's lips twitched, half amusement, half respect. You're accusing Trent of murder, Wolfe. You'd better have more than a scared clerk. I do. Wolfe reached into the desk drawer and produced a small black ledger, still faintly scorched. This was recovered by Mr. Goodwin from your warehouse, Mr. Trent. You destroyed most of it, but not enough. Here, he flipped it open. Payments marked with initials L.B. Leon Brewster, and on the facing page a note in your hand, Hella gone, Dean next. Trent's complexion went from executive tan to porcelain. You can't prove I wrote that. Kramer grunted. We'll see what handwriting says. Wolfe inclined his head. Indeed, but we need not wait for ink to dry. The evidence is cumulative. You bribed Brewster's typist, you forged his will. When he repented, you silenced him. When Miss Dean discovered the forgery, you silenced her as well. Eleanor Brewster gave a soft cry. Garvin, no, tell them it's not true, Trent's voice cracked. Eleanor, be quiet. She rose, trembling. You told me Leon's death was an accident. You said he left no confession. He whirled on her. He didn't. That was a lie they printed. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. Ah, you confirm you knew of the confession's existence, though it was never disclosed publicly until the Gazette rumour. Thank you, Mr. Trent. Kramer's cigar froze mid-air. Got him, he muttered. Trent realized it a second later. His breath caught. Sweat gleamed at his temple. You can't. This is entrapment. Not at all, Wolfe said smoothly. Merely patience. You might call it poetic symmetry. Your confession at last, unwilling but authentic. The silence was taut enough to hum. Then Minter broke. I saw the envelope. Miss Dean had it. Brewster's original draft. She said she'd give it to Wolfe if anything happened to her. Phooey, Wolfe said softly. The devil is efficient. He burned it, but the truth remains flame-proof. Trent lurched to his feet. I want my lawyer. Excellent, Wolfe said. Inspector, oblige him. Kramer stubbed out his cigar. With pleasure. As Stebbins came in from the hall to escort Trent, Wolfe turned to Mrs. Brewster. Madam, you have my condolences. You were a pawn in a wretched game. Your husband was not the villain. He was the conscience Mr. Trent lacked. She pressed her handkerchief to her mouth and nodded silently. When the door shut behind them, Kramer stood for a moment, staring at the space Trent had occupied. All right, Wolfe. You pulled it off. I'll even say it straight. Nice work. Wolfe inclined his head. Your cooperation, Inspector, was— He paused. Marginally tolerable. Kramer snorted. Coming from you, that's applause. He headed for the door, then stopped to eye me. You, Goodwin, keep that mouth of yours out of my reports. Wolfe's voice hardened. If you impugn my assistant again, Inspector, you'll find I can be discourteous. Kramer looked back, startled, then unexpectedly smiled. Noted. He left, shutting the door quietly behind him. For a long moment, Wolfe didn't move. Then he exhaled through his nose and rang for Fritz. Beer, he said. I leaned against the desk. You know, you just made a police inspector behave like a gentleman. That's a rarer crime than murder. He gave me one of his looks, equal parts disdain and indulgence. Archie, if you persist in hyperbole, I shall deduct it from your salary. Then I'll call it poetry, less taxable. Fritz arrived with 2 glasses. Wolfe lifted his in ritual victory. To confession, he said. I clinked mine, forced or otherwise. He nodded, pleased. Indeed, the truth, when cornered, always surrenders, even to me. I grinned. Especially to you. Wolfe sighed contentedly and took a long sip. Pfui, he murmured. What a waste of 40 minutes. After dinner, I typed up the report while he retreated to his orchids, humming faintly, a sign of satisfaction, not music. At 10, I brought him the final draft for signature. He read it line by line, pen poised. Adequate, he said at last, signing with a flourish, though your syntax grows more impudent by the day. Yeah, it's a side effect of competence, he handed it back. And of beer. You may retire, Mr. Goodwin. I turned to go, then glanced back. Hey, boss. He looked up. You know, that line you used earlier, about confession being overrated? You might have something there, but I still say you enjoy it more than you admit. His mouth twitched. Go to bed, Archie. After one more. Fui. That was the night's curtain line. I left him amid his orchids, the glow from the lamps turning the petals gold. Outside, Manhattan hummed on, its secrets safe for now, at least until another conscience cracked under its own weight. And me? I went downstairs, poured myself the last of the beer, and decided that if confession really did require honesty, Wolfe had nothing to worry about.